Hello, my name is Alan Morgan. I'm with the Building State Capacity and Productivity Center at EdVance WestAT. I'm here today with a longtime friend, colleague, and one of the most respected state superintendents in the country, June Atkinson, here in North Carolina. June, thanks so much for taking time to be part of this discussion about what I know is going to be a very important issue to the students, teachers, and really the people of North Carolina. So we're going to talk today a little bit about the Every Student Succeeds Act, federal legislation that succeeds the No Child Left Behind, represents the latest authorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which has been around a very long time. Actually, even longer than I've been around, which is saying something. So speaking of being around for a while, I should start this commentary by congratulating you on succeeding to the #1 tenured Chief State School Officer in the United States, June. It is, that is not an easy thing. June, we've got about 18 months before Every Student Succeeds will have to be implemented in the classrooms of North Carolina and elsewhere across the country. So, something so massive, such a huge potential impact on the system, is bound to pose a number of challenges and opportunities. Tell us a little bit about what you think is kind of the top of that list in both categories.
Well, let's start with opportunities. I believe that the new legislation will give us an opportunity to improve public education in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. It gives us the opportunity to go beyond just a test score in order to determine the success of each of our schools. It gives us an opportunity to engage the public in dialogue about what we want for our schools, what do we want our teachers to be able to do in the classroom, and what do we want our students to learn. Mm-hmm. So in the Southern Baptist tradition, there are always times for revival. So I see this as a great opportunity to have a revival surrounding public education and how we measure public education and what is important to each community in our state as it relates to their schools. It gives us the opportunity, as I say across North Carolina, to make public education the best choice for our students.
So you've actually, if I understand what's happened in recent history in North Carolina, you've already started a series of public hearings. You're trying to kind of see what the quote-unquote stakeholders, I'm not always sure I like that word, but it is probably accurate. Mm-hmm. So what are you hearing so far from the people of the state about what they'd like to see done differently?
Well, number one, they want an accountability system that reflects what they're doing well and where they need to improve. I am hearing across the state that they want measures that go beyond the proficiency of students on end of grade and end of course tests. And I'm also hearing a lot of conversation about how we need to address the entire child rather than having an accountability system segmented into just core courses versus elective courses or versus other types of measures that could be a good indicator of how well our students are learning.
Mm-hmm. Are there barriers to, as you kind of assess where the system is right now, are there barriers to getting that done in North Carolina?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we have in North Carolina is to fulfill the goal that is in ESSA, to have an aligned state and federal accountability system. Mm-hmm. North Carolina is in its 4th year of an A through F system, and that system is based on proficiency of students in grades 3 through 8 and also at the high school level. It is very prescriptive, and so with ESSA, we know that we have to add indicators, non-academic indicators. So by virtue of the federal law, we are out of alignment. So one of our challenges is to develop through all of our work with people in North Carolina a very comprehensive quality accountability system. And then as we develop that system, to have input from our legislators so that when we get through the first leg of our journey, we can go to the General Assembly and say, we've got massive input and we'd like to work with you in changing the A through F system to that which the public expects our schools to do and to be measured by X.
So, if I recall correctly, in North Carolina, the largest proportion of your accountability system, the metrics that are being used right now, is your kind of student proficiency numbers.
Right.
And then there's a pretty small percentage that relates to growth or something of that nature. Is that not correct?
That's correct. Our system has 80% proficiency on tests in grades 3 through 8, and then 20% growth. I'm talking about what I'm hearing from the public.
Right.
One of the pieces of advice we've received is make growth more important than proficiency, because it really is. Growth is really a measure
Are
of
you on the
how
pathway
well.
or not?
Right, exactly.
Good. As you think about kind of where we are today in the efforts to move towards implementation, one of the features that we're still a bit in the air about is how the U.S. Department of Ed is going to construct rules and regulations that make this more possible to translate what's in law into what's in reality in the classroom. There have been some interesting challenges, both for special ed kids as well as for particularly special ed testing, as well as looking at funding-related issues like supplement, non-supplant kinds of issues, jargon for those of us in education. But the bottom line is, do you see anything coming up there that you feel will be a problem for North Carolina as you think about the forthcoming rules and regulations, or just kind of give me your sense of how that's going from your perspective in North Carolina?
Well, I appreciate the U.S. Department of Education reaching out to get some advice. My advice is to do as little as possible when it comes to regulations. As I look at the supplement, not supplant, I believe that what has been proposed is something that is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to be able to implement. It looks fine on paper, but it has problems when it comes to the notion of how you would calculate that. And I am a supporter of supplementing, not supplanting, because we don't want to just trade
Take away
1
money
cent. Right. So I would encourage the U.S. Department of Education to have as few regulations as possible.
Okay. So, having been a former chief, I'm right there at your back supporting that position. I think that seems to be the opinion of a number of your colleagues who are part of this process of these blogs, words that I'm trying to add to my vocabulary here. So let's come back to your tenure. For a person of such minimal age, you have this advanced experience as a chief state school officer. So let me observe first that, as I think probably many of our viewers know, about half of the chiefs in the country haven't been there very long. They're like a year or so less in their tenure in the role. And it's a huge role with so many challenges to it. It's a great fun role too in many respects. That said, you've been there as the senior member now of the Chiefs. If you could give a little advice to your colleagues, particularly those that are coming to this role with a little less experience in a state education agency, what kind of counsel would you give them?
Well, I would give them 3 pieces of advice. One is make friends before you need them. Someone told me that a long time ago, and as I think of that saying, make friends before you need them, and apply it to ESSA, then that says to me that you've got to spend lots and lots and lots of time with people who will be responsible for carrying out the the plan that we will ultimately develop. And I believe that I also like the notion of whosoever will may come. Never close the door to people who want to give advice, because in the end, if our North Carolinians know that we've listened to them, if our superintendents know that we've listened to them, if our teachers know that, if our principals know that, if our parents know that, then when we get to the plan, they will have been a part of the debate. They will have been a part of the idea generation. And so they can see the progression. And then they, even though they may not all agree with what will be our ultimate accountability system, they can understand the process. The second advice is that if you want an idea to stick, if you want people to support what you're doing, remember that you need to communicate at least 10 times. And if you do not communicate in different venues, in different areas, then people will not remember. So you've got to continue to talk about it. You've got to have a very succinct message to communicate. One thing that we have started saying in our department as we have meetings across the state is that ESSA gives us an opportunity to measure school success by more than just a test score. So we've taken what we've heard in the past, I don't want my school to be measured by just a test score. So then we say, here is an opportunity to do that. So they are two big pieces of advice that I would give my colleagues. And then the third is that remember, no one, everyone will not be satisfied.
Right.
So you have to have a way of you have to have a rationale about why this was not selected or why this won't work, and to keep that ongoing dialogue. In fact, I told our superintendents at our last meeting, my goal is that we have talked with you so much about ESSA that I will hear from you. Will you please not talk about it anymore? So
good luck on that. That's great.
But the other thing is that we need to recognize, the third thing is that education is dynamic in the sense that people are moving in and out. So don't fall into the trap that you've communicated, you think everything is fine, and then forget about the new superintendents, about the new principals, about the new teachers coming into the system.
Very, very good. I want to take advantage of, Gina and I did not rehearse this, so I want to thank her for those 3 points for a couple of reasons. First, the Building State Capacity and Productivity Center, which is a U.S. Department of Ed funded enterprise that really has prompted these conversations today and a few other days with other key chiefs in the country. One of the top initiatives, based upon what chiefs told us their priorities were, has been to try to ensure that there is a strategic communication plan out there, that there's some way to take these really top priority issues and to have an organized method of interacting with the stakeholders so that you, as often as said, you can't over communicate. You simply have to have some strategy that allows you to be able to build that kind of ownership beyond just the Office of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. It has to be owned by everyone else. And I think what you've described in those 3 points is probably the answer, if you will, but I'll let you add to it, answer to one of my questions, which really was, how do you see the strategic communication related to Every Student Succeeds kind of rolling out? And I think you've given us that, but do you want to add anything to it in light of the value of strategic communication?
Yes, we know from research that parents listen to teachers. So consequently, a part of any strategic communication plan must be to help teachers to be able to communicate with parents. We also know that teachers listen to principals. So you also have to have a part of your communication plan, principals, and what would be the messages of principals. We know that principals listen to local superintendents. So you have to have a message or messages that principals, that superintendents can
Right.
use with principals, that principals can use with teachers, and teachers can use with parents. And if you have that communication plan with different, not a different message, but different strategies for all of those areas, then we know we can go much further in having people to understand what it's about and how we want to change.
Makes very good sense. So if you think about this kind of set of questions we've been talking about as it relates to Every Student Succeeds, Dean Nafziger and others of us at the Building State Capacity Center were kind of thinking through what would be the key questions that might be useful to discuss in this kind of setting. What did I forget? What should I have asked you about what you are doing or plan to be doing, hope to be doing, that I didn't include in the questions today, June?
Well, I know that it's going to be a big challenge for us, but how do you take all of the feedback, put it together, and then go the next round of getting feedback? So
Okay.
I do believe it's really important that you do not adopt the policy or the practice of one and done. So you have to have more drafts. If we have 15 drafts, I will be pleased with that, because that means that we continue to get feedback, we continue to refine. So don't give up too early in making sure that, or having your plan ready. You just need to keep
Interesting. Okay.
going over and over and over.
So if the idea of multiple iterations of the guidance that you're going to be in, rules in some cases that you're going to be setting forth for schools and districts and educators in North Carolina, if that makes sense from your perspective, is there enough time to offer that same advice to the U.S. Department of Ed? In other words, as they create rules and regulations, and they're on a time frame and they're trying to get this done, is there a capacity, in your view, to be able to basically give them the same advice? And that's, you need to give us another set of kind of drafts here, pretty firm, but narrow this down to the ones that are really probably most subject to question and concern and maybe even criticism or comment, I'll say, and that is, some of these issues that have been a bit more cantankerous for the regulations development group.
Right.
What's your thinking about how that ought to apply at the federal level?
Well, I know that they were under a very strict timeline, so
That's correct.
I certainly understand that. But as with what we're trying to do, we want to focus on the majors rather than the minors. So as rolling out the regulations, I would encourage them to start with accountability, with testing, with the innovative assessments, because in the big scheme of things, they are going to be the essence upon which everything else is built primarily in ESSA. And we're trying to do that also. I know that a teacher in Wilson, North Carolina may not be concerned with page 1000 and what we have to do to meet the letter of the law on page 1000. And so we have to be able to differentiate what has the greatest impact, what are major issues versus minor issues. And I would encourage the U.S. Department of Education to do the same.
Great. Dr. June Atkinson, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, North Carolina. Anything else you want to have while the open mic is here, so to speak? What else to share with our colleagues who might be viewing this today?
Well, I view ESSA as a way of us to move to a better place in public education. For example, in reality, I do believe that end of grade and end of course test given at the very end of the year is a 20th century artifact. And so we don't have a better system yet, but we need to work on having a better system where we get to the place where assessments are integrated into activities, so students and teachers don't know the difference, or they don't make a big deal out of it. And so ESSA gives us an opportunity to start and continue that journey to get to a better place where technology can be one of our best friends in determining how well our schools are doing. It is also a challenge to get people to wipe the slate clean, to say, here's where we are and we can start over in many areas. So that takes a lot of creativity to get people to think in creative ways. And in North Carolina, we have not come to the place where we have reached that pinnacle of creativity, but I feel comfortable as we continue to work with people in North Carolina, especially our educators, that we can devise some really creative but meaningful and valid and reliable ways of determining how well our schools are serving our students.
Very good. Dr. June Atkinson, thank you so much as always. Great
Thank
to
you.
see you, and we so much appreciate from the Building State Capacity and Productivity Center the contributions, not only for this kind of a conversation, but frankly for the work that it represents on behalf of children everywhere, and particularly today here in North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you.